Hi everyone, thank you for joining today's webinar on keeping your business afloat during a recession. Joining me today is Andrea Reynolds, who is the CEO and founder at Swoop Funding, and Ron Pearson, who is the customer success lead at Futurely. For those who I've not yet had the pleasure of meeting, I'm Emma and I am the Digital Solutions Manager here at Referengers. Before I do pass over to both Andrea and Ron for their introductions, I do just want to make everyone aware that firstly, this webinar is being recorded. So the link will be received via email, I think tomorrow latest. And as well as that, we will be sharing it on our socials. The Q&A box is open, so please feel free to leave any questions that you do have for myself, Andrea or Ron. And I do have an assistant in the background who will be changing the slides for me. So if you do hear me say next slide, please, that is why. So over to Andrea for her introductions first.
Thank you, Emma. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrea Reynolds and I'm CEO and founder of Swoop Funding. I started my career as an accountant and spent most of my time in corporate finance trying to help businesses access the funding that they needed across loans, equity investment, grants, or indeed tax credits, and also trying to unlock cash savings for them. So looking at all the services that were being provided to the business and trying to get better deals in there to improve the bottom line and bring cash back into the business. I decided that it was time to build a tool and a platform where all accountants, all businesses could have the same benefits. And that's what we've done. We've built a platform where businesses and their accountants can integrate their cloud accounting software and their bank accounts, etc. And that's where we do the heavy lifting to surface solutions for businesses, no matter what's going on or what stage of the life cycle they're at. And that's Swoop. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrea. And over to you, Ron.
Hi, yeah, my name is Ron. I work at Futurely by Sage. We make forecasting and reporting software basically with the mission of getting the best business information into the hands of every small business that we can, essentially to inform your decisions, to help you grow and to reduce risk, basically. So I work in the customer success team. So I work with accountants to deliver that information to small businesses. I've been working with Referengers for a good few years. Lovely people.
Thank you, Ron. Perfect. Next slide, please. So let's get into it. Andrea, this is a subject and a topic that is on the forefront of every business owner's mind at the moment. I think there's so much going on. I don't think everyone can keep on top of it, and not everyone knows what to be aware of. So the three main things that I do want to cover with you today is the recession. So what businesses need to be aware of, how it will affect them, and how they should best be planning, as well as that, the energy crisis and the mini budget overview, because I know there's been a lot of changes with that, especially. So let's start with the recession. What is going on at the moment, and what advice would you give to business owners that are watching right now?
Yes, I think the first thing to say to anyone at the moment is no recession is the same. So this is not 2008 post financial crisis. This crisis is and recession is a result of double-digit inflation. So it's the supply chain costs, it's energy costs, it's because of all of this inflation. What always has to happen is interest rates have to go up to try and tame inflation. When we have these kinds of environments, people consume less, and therefore businesses invest less until they see what's going on in the markets, and therefore we move into a recessionary period. This is more transitory. So what I mean by that is it shouldn't last as long as something like the financial crisis. So there is credit in the market. For example, in the last recession, businesses could not get any funding whatsoever. It was impossible. In this one, there is a lot of credit in the market. There is a lot of funding available, whether it's banks or not. So that is the first thing. There are solutions out there if you have a cash crunch. The second part is that, yes, your costs are rising. All of your input costs are rising. Now, the energy relief bill, which we'll talk about in a few moments, is significantly helping you you'll get your first bill this November with those changes in it. That'll last until March. What the government is hoping is, due to this transitory nature of this recession, that by then wholesale prices will start to come down, so they may not have to give as much relief the next time, but they will be reviewing it at that time. And then the next part is, recession is needed for input costs to come down. And so once that starts to happen and the Bank of England starts to see that actually the impact of these interest rates is reducing consumption, is therefore reducing inflation, then we will start to see an easing up of whether they're going to increase further interest rates. Now, we're going to have another meeting of the Bank of England in early November now, and there will be another interest rate rise, but will it be as high as initially they thought? Because since Rishi Sunak has come in, what we've seen is bond markets have calmed down. We need them to calm down because that is a direct inverse relationship to interest rates and mortgage interest rates. And so hopefully that stability that the market is now believing is going to be there due to this new government, then that should start to help the interest rate rises. So previously, if we had had this webinar, let's say this time last week or 2 weeks ago, I would be predicting Bank of England rates rising up to over 5%, whereas now we're sort of predicting around the 4% mark, and that's huge. That's a big difference. And as I say, this is transitory. It's related to impact of COVID actually on supply chains and the fallout of that, and essentially the war in Ukraine. So I'll stop there just to say my main message would be, this is I would say a shorter period we're going to go through than the previous recessions. So there are ways to survive this, which we'll talk about, and there are ways to come through this where you're a stronger business actually when you come out the other end.
Perfect. Thanks, Andrea. And before we do move on to the electricity crisis, I know you briefly mentioned that and the mini budget. What should businesses and business owners who are watching now, what should they be doing? Is there anything that you would recommend that they start with and then gradually plan towards?
Yes. The old cliche, cash is king. Cash and cash flow is king. I cannot emphasize this enough. I've been through the previous recession, and businesses don't fail because they don't have a good business or a good proposition. It's they run out of cash. You may think you have no options, but you do. And the sooner you know where you're going to have your cash crunch and you look at various scenario analysis, then we can look to build that contingency. So the worst time ever to go for funding is when you've run out of cash, because the first thing lenders are assessing is, oh, well, there seems to be credit tension here. There doesn't seem to be enough in here to make these repayments. So I always say, always go for money when you have money. And the only way you can do that is by scenario planning. So if I give you an example, let's say we get to March and this government says we can't afford to give further energy relief. Then we're back up. At the moment, we're getting half of the wholesale price. That's what the relief is giving us. So let's just say that's no longer there. It goes to double. Let's plan, let's look, let's see where we can unlock savings. The other part for businesses to know is, even before this recession, small and medium businesses are the most overcharged customer segment. Full stop. The regulator has regularly announced this, whether that's energy, whether it's your banking, whether it's your international payments. You are being overcharged. There's no energy provider that is the same, by the way. We are getting quotes for businesses where it ranges from 1.2 million to 700,000 for their energy bill. That's $500,000. So there are ways that Raffingers, you can help your clients now through working with Swoop and Futrli. Let's do those scenario analysis. Let's build contingencies, unlock cash that is there from your service providers. Like, never ever make an international payment from your bank, by the way. You are absolutely like, that is the worst place to make an international payment from. Little things like this, where we can really become more savvy business owners, survive this. And then the second part is, for example, you might have a big VAT bill coming up and you need to buy stock. What should you do in that situation? Well, now there are credit facilities, loans where you can pay your VAT bill over a period of 3 months, use that cash that you were about to pay for your VAT, buy the stock, sell it, make your margin, etc. So plenty of new ways for you to unlock your cash and working capital within the business to survive. So that's what I would say. This is a way that we should all be running our businesses anyway, but it's just more magnified by what's going on around us right now.
I'm sure Ron agrees, because obviously Futrli specialise in forecasting and cash flow, but I mean, I could not agree more with cash flow being the key. I've worked with businesses in the past who come, for example, to their tax bill or their VAT bill, or, you know, they want to make some sort of development within their business and they just can't because they haven't got the cash. And now during this time where businesses might not be aware or might not be monitoring their financials or knowing what sort of position they're in, this is where and why it is now key. It's key to have those people in place, such as your trusted advisor, who can assist you with those sort of things, put forward those recommendations, spot those opportunities, and make sure that you are running your business as you should be.
Yes, and I just, the last point I would make is, because there are so many changes happening, like, for example, actually the fiscal statement may now not be happening on the 31st of October. You would have heard the quasi-Kwarteng budget, then you've heard the Jeremy Hunt, you know, you're thinking, what is what here, what's staying, what's going? And that's why you need your trusted advisor to stay on top of all of this and actually say to you, out of this budget, it might have sounded like doom and gloom, but there's actually some key benefits in there for businesses, like national insurance hike being reversed, like the investment allowance. If you have to buy plant and equipment, you have a permanent investment allowance now of 1 million to deduct against your corporation tax relief. SEIS, if you're a business who needs to raise investment, brilliant news. They have now increased the SEIS allowance to 250,000. That's going to have a huge impact on the investment market in the UK. So in between all the changes and doing, there are some good measures in there as well. So that's our job, to keep on top of that, to then help businesses get the most out of what's there.
Yeah. And the partnership with Raffingers and Swoop, obviously, as well as the cash flow element, there is the electricity crisis element as well, because Swoop are now helping businesses with finding the best quote available for them. Could you give some more information on that, if you don't mind, for the viewers who are watching?
Yes. I think the first thing is that, you know, again, you might be thinking, you're hearing all these numbers being bandied around. The energy relief bill, you will now start to see in your November bills. You don't have to do anything. It's the energy providers will make those adjustments themselves. But I will give one hugely important tip. If you are coming up for renewal, or are looking down the track at when you are up for renewal, just know you should be shopping around. No energy provider is the same, and no quote is the same. So use Raffingers and their partnership with us to help you get the best deal possible. Even as I say, before the recession, you know, the business next door to you was probably on either a way more expensive or way cheaper plan, even though your consumption is the same. This is a market that the regulator is really looking at closely, and they're looking at implementing new changes, because the variations in pricing is crazy. So that's one thing I would say. But typically, just to give you an example, in terms of the energy relief bill, let's say it hadn't come in, what is the help, the actual bottom line help? Well, if you were, let's say, in retail with 6 megawatts of consumption, you're saving on average about £4,000 a month with this relief bill. If your manufacturer would say 10 megawatts of energy consumption and say half that in gas consumption, you're saving close to 10,000. So there's huge savings going on there. And as I say, we're watching the wholesale market prices to see, are they coming down? But if you are coming up for renewal, your questions are going to be, do I go into a variable contract? Do I go into a fixed contract? What will that look like? How much will the prices be? And that's where I think Raffingers, you're fantastic that you're coming into your own and really being there for your business owners during this time, because it's a crazy world to navigate right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. And for our viewers who are watching, if you are interested in gaining a quote to compare against your current electricity renewal, let us know. Our contact details will be shared at the end of this webinar, and I would be more than happy to talk with Swoop and get that sorted for you and have that with you. As well as that, I know the last thing that I did just want to cover was the mini budget. I mean, this is, like I said, something that has changed time and time again. There's been a lot of updates, a lot of announcements. So can we just quickly cover what the latest is and what business owners should be aware of?
Yes, I think the first one is the national insurance reversal. We will all see that impact in November. And again, typically, if you're a business with, let's say, 10 employees or something like that, that's probably a saving of just over 2,000 for the employer on an annual basis. It's also being reversed for the individual themselves. So that 1.25% will no longer be there. The second one is, as I say, well, corporation tax, they've now said is going up. So from April, the corporation tax rate and the various bands that they've created is going up to 25%. Now, just to say that it's banded, so it won't be 25% for everyone. It's on a scaling basis. But what could you do if you now suddenly have a larger, if you're in that great position of having a large tax bill because you're profitable? Well, then if you have investment plans, maybe this is the time to look at that, because you now have a £1 million investment allowance, which is significant, and that is permanent now. It was originally brought in to try and kickstart investment and improve productivity post-COVID, and that is 100% allowance that can be set off against your corporation tax bill. So that's kind of those points. As I say, SEIS, so that's the Seed Enterprise Investment Allowance. If you're a business that's young, starting out 3 years or younger, you're thinking, how am I going to get myself to the next stage? Investment is a great way to help you grow your business. That's not related to having, a debt repayment coming out. And I really feel this is going to be very positive. Once the markets calm down, you have high net worth individuals, angel investors, and new funds emerging where they can invest, and you can raise £250,000 under this scheme, where the investor can actually save 50% of their investment off their income tax bill. So we're going to see huge growth in that area. And that's a good news announcement for business owners. So as I say, in between the midst of everything, there are some good news items. Also, other bits that I would say, why do we care if the bond market is up, down, etc.? Well, it's directly related to mortgage rates. So seeing the bond market recover is wonderful news for us. So again, that should help us start to look at better planning in terms of a commercial mortgage. For example, the rates have been all over the place for the last month or so. Now we're starting to see that settle down, and lenders are starting to commit to new rates. So again, more advice: do not enter a fixed rate mortgage right now for commercial mortgages. Worst time. We can actually look at ways where we can refinance, etc., later down the line. So I would say those are the key elements for business owners right now. Stamp duty is still staying, also the rates that were announced in terms of the relief. So those are kind of the key summary points, I would say. Energy bill relief, as we've talked about, runs until March, and then we'll review based on wholesale prices.
Thank you, Andrea. That was really helpful, and I'm sure our viewers have found that super helpful. Key takeaway point from this section then is make sure you've got enough cash in the bank to survive this. Cash flow, like you said, is key, and that's how Raffingers and Swoop can help business owners and their business survive during this crucial time.
Yes, yes. And know that there are different products out there. If someone's not paying you in time, that invoice can be financed. If something else occurs, suddenly something happens that wasn't in your contingency plan, there are ways that we can look to finance that. But yeah, as I say, this is where cash flow forecasting comes into its own.
Yeah, and that leads us nicely onto our next slide, actually, as this is where we will now talk more about Futrli and Ron's role within Futrli and how he helps both us as partners and our clients. Next slide, please. Thank you. So like Ron said, we've been partnered with Futrli now for years. We work with a lot of our clients to produce them not only cash flow forecasts, but also budgets as part of their management accounts. So I will hand over to Ron very shortly, but I do just want to say that as cash flow is key, so is using an appropriate software to manage your business. So I will talk more in the next section about why you should be using cloud software and how it can really help you and your business. But just by implementing Futrli within your business and monitoring your financials and monitoring your cash flow, you will really see huge success rates. You will know exactly where your business is. You will know how to plan for the future, and you will have us on hand to spot those opportunities for you. So Ron, I will hand over to you to talk more about Futrli and just really educate our viewers on what the difference is mainly between forecasting and budgeting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's really important to understand the difference between some of the terminology that gets thrown around when you're talking about forecasting. Because obviously you've got budgeting, you've got forecasting, you've got scenario modeling, like Andrea said before, and you've got to know, and then you've got cash flow forecasts, you've got three-way forecasts, lots of different stuff getting thrown around, indirect, direct, all of these things. So I think most small businesses that I speak to do have a budget in place, which is great. You have to have your financial plan laid out for the year so that you can then know sort of how you're doing compared to that over the course of the year. And I think it used to be the case that probably that was as far as a lot of people went down the road when it comes to forecasting, because you set it at the beginning of the year, you work to that plan. But I mean, like we were just talking about there, things are changing so quickly at the moment that a plan that you made back in June or April, whenever the start of your financial year is, that has been out of date for a very long time now. It's important that you've got it there so you can measure yourself against it, but that's where forecasting comes in, because a forecast is essentially a budget that you update on a regular basis to be an accurate representation of where your business is heading at that point of time. And working with your financial advisor to keep that up to date so that you know sort of how far off target you're going to be, as well as how far off target you are, is super important. And then the next sort of stage of that is scenarios and scenario modeling. So that's exactly sort of comes into the sort of stuff that we're talking about there, with things like energy bills or mini budgets and stuff like that, things that change. If your energy bills could go up anywhere from £1,000 to £5,000 each month, you need to know exactly the impact that that's going to have on your business. What's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? And what does that do to your cash runway too? Because to Andrea's point, you need cash to get cash. So you need to know what your cash runway is and how far away you are from hitting the bottom of it, so that you know the best place to sort of apply for these things. And then on the cash flow versus three-way forecast side of things, I mean, it's very easy to know, to predict what you're going to sell in a month, but it's very difficult to know when you're going to get paid for it. So having an intelligent solution in place that will help do the heavy lifting on that is imperative, especially when you need to leverage the cash that you've got as best as you can at the moment.
I think a huge fear as well for business owners is knowing whether they could afford to take on a loan. So whether they can afford to make those monthly repayments based on the information they're looking at. So something like Futrli, having that in place will provide them with that information. They will know if they can take, for example, £100,000 loan over the course of a year, and if they can repay it back based on what their business will be looking like in a year's time.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we've got a built-in loan forecaster in the platform. And I mean, there's a reason why Futrli and Swoop are best friends, because they provide a smorgasbord, and then you can just test which one's going to work best for your business, essentially. Because there will be different options, they'll be financed differently, you'll repay it differently. Yeah, so being able to test the effects of that, because I think through conversations, I think a lot of people think that, you know, you get a big lump of cash in the bank, and that's really nice to have that to lean back on, but that's going to have a wide-reaching effect on your business, and investing that cash appropriately as well, not just using it as a buffer, is really important to test out too.
And I would just add also that, as Ron mentioned, funding now comes in all different guises. So there are ones where it's not just a fixed amount every month. It's depending on what your revenues are, they will take a percentage from your revenues. So, you know, you pay according to what you can afford to pay. And then the second part is, there are also lots of businesses in major growth phase right now. And a lot of those businesses, when you're looking for growth capital, you know, you won't be able to get that funding without your three-way cash flow forecasting model. They need to see what the impact on your P&L, your balance sheet, etc. is. And so, and the lender themselves will be analyzing your forecasting model to get you that funding. And the better that is, by the way, the better the interest rate we can get, because we're showing that you are a business that knows exactly the impacts of different scenarios on your business. Then you are more creditworthy. So there's a huge correlation between even the cost of capital and how you manage your finances through tools like Futrli. To get that funding as well. Same if you're going for investment. First thing they're going to say is, send us your financial model. They'll come back and say, we think you're being a bit optimistic and you're going to have to make all those changes. So they very much go hand in hand, which is when Ron says we're best friends, that's because each one helps the other, not just the business owner, but those who are assessing whether to give you that finance.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with businesses in the past who had wanted to apply for funding, but unfortunately could not get that funding because they did not have a suitable model in place or any financial figures which will show that forecast for the next 3 years, for example, or management account figures. So that is definitely, I think, a big struggle, especially for those businesses who do want to apply for funding, which is why, like we said, this is more crucial than ever, just to even have this in place, just to see how your business is doing anyway, regardless of if you do want to apply for funding or not.
Exactly that. Exactly that. It's just a good way to run your business. And as I say, don't worry that you have to do all this heavy lifting. The point of integrating your Xero or your Sage, etc., is so that you get the benefit of the tools that we built alongside the advice from Raffingers to actually run your business in a better way. So
yeah, and we've had success stories. You know, Ron would know, we've had clients who have joined Futrli where we've assisted them with the setting up of the actual boards and the forecasting and the budgeting, etc., and giving them that advice, and we've seen real improvement firsthand just on how much better they're now managing their business, how they're viewing their financials and the decisions they're making. So yeah, like I said, I would highly recommend using both Futrli and Swoop together if need be, because yeah, like you said, they're best friends and they go hand in hand, so it just makes complete sense.
Yeah, and yeah, the other, sorry, just the last point I would make as well is, you know, you might not go for funding, you might not need a new account for your energy, etc. But what I would say is it's about running your business to the optimum it can be, and that's what we're all striving to be as business owners, is running the best business possible, and using the tools that are out there for you. Like, why would you waste your time running around trying to look for funding? Your bank's going to say maybe, no, depends, etc. Rates are changing every single day. Like, why would you put yourself through that? So I think that's the point we're trying to say here is, just do this anyway. It's just the way to run a business in the best way possible.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're not testing decisions that you're making through a financial model, then you're doing it with one hand tied behind your back, because you don't need to make those decisions blind. You can test it and you can retest it. And I think part of the reason why some businesses don't operate like this is because I think it feels a little bit unattainable, because 20 years ago you needed a room full of analysts to get this kind of information, but it's not like that anymore. You can speak to your advisor, and side by side with them you can build up a model that is accurate to your business with your input, so it's not someone just guessing on your behalf. You can give them, we use things like non-financial data to build models. You can tell your advisor how many heads you're expecting in the restaurant over the next 3 months. They can build up a financial model from that. It doesn't even have to be super technical, because the technology itself will do the heavy lifting. And especially with the things going on at the moment, like, we're going through a recession, supply lines are stretched, mini budgets, Brexits, all of these things. Things like dependency need to be tested, both on the supplier and the customer front, because if those, you can keep your ship afloat, but if they don't keep their ship afloat because they don't have a budget in place, then that's going to affect you too. So all of these things need to be sort of monitored, and the Raffingers team are more than happy to talk you through it.
Yeah. Like Ron said, we will be there every step of the way. I will be on hand to help implement. I will be on hand to assist with any training or any advice that you need. So together with Futrli, we definitely feel we can make a huge difference to you and your business. Perfect. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Ron, before we move on?
I don't think so.
Perfect. That's great. No, thank you, Ron. Next slide, please. Great. So the reason Raffingers have partnered with both Swoop and Futrli is because we feel that we can best serve you and your business with the resources that we have access to. So without these platforms in place, there might be things that we're not spotting instantly. So for example, with Futrli, if you've got your forecast ready, you've got your budget there, you've got your management accounts there, it means that we are looking at your financials. We can spot those opportunities for you. We can recommend any improvements that we think you should be making. And then together with Swoop, that's where we would then say, oh, you're a little bit light on the cash flow side. Would you like us to give you some more information on Swoop and the sort of funding lenders that we could put you in contact with? As well as that, there is one thing that I do just want to add. My biggest recommendation would be that all businesses should now be using a cloud accounting software. It's extremely important, because in order for you to see the best information on Futrli, and as well as Swoop, really, to know what sort of position you're in, you need to be using a software which will provide you with that live information. So we here at Raffingers, we specialize in Xero, and it means that you can access your financials on the go. You can access it on the web. It's live, but you can view your profit and loss, your balance sheet, your bank balances every single day live. So it just means you are keeping on top of everything at the moment, which is absolutely crucial. And as well as that, Xero do integrate with Futrli, so it just makes it that little bit nicer to have those two interlinking one another. So it sort of takes out the manual work, but it provides us with the ability to provide you with the best advice possible, and really just have those discussions which you might have not been thinking of, or something that we might not have spotted because the data isn't live. So I would highly recommend that you do get in contact with myself or your main point of contact at Raffingers and discuss Xero further for your business. As well as that, the one more thing that I did just want to discuss on this point as well is, obviously the people who are watching at the moment are mainly business owners and worrying about how the recession and the crisis will affect their business, but as well as that, it is going to be affecting employees. Me obviously being an employee of Raffingers, I worry about obviously how it will affect me and what I should be doing and how best to prepare. A couple of things that have come to mind, obviously, on how to support your employees during the recession is communication. As we all know, communication is key. So it's the best thing to obviously keep in contact with your employees, keep them updated on the latest trends, especially in the sort of environment that we're in around finance. It's always good to know what is going on and how best to educate people. And as well as that, I think it is just really reevaluating what sort of plans you have in place at the moment, especially for employees. So for example, the benefit system, if you have a benefit system in place, I think now would definitely be the best time to review that, to make sure that that is still, you know, stable, it's still the best benefit system that you can be offering, and just making sure that all employees are happy, really. But I don't know if there's anything else, Ron and Andrea, that you would recommend for business owners and advice to their employees.
Yeah, I think there are simple things that have huge impact. So we asked an independent financial advisor to come and do lunch and learn sessions with our teams to actually talk about financial well-being, and everything from how you're going to survive your mortgage goes up, if you're coming out of a fixed rate, right through to actually planning with your pension stuff. But particularly the younger generation, they don't. And so the feedback we've been getting on that, and you know, we didn't have to pay for it. We just went to a firm that was recommended, and from their perspective, they're thinking these are future clients of ours, so why wouldn't we? The impact that's had, the feedback we've been getting has been immense, because I think it was just a relief to be able to talk to someone. So it's been lunch and learn for group, and then individuals can make a one-to-one appointment after that. And so that just ability to talk to someone other than your employer seems to have really worked. And then the other things are, you know, from our side, we were looking at, well, how is everyone dealing with the cost of living crisis? So, for example, is it that, well, their commuting is costing them too much, so if they work from home for 2 days, that saves them a bit, etc. So just trying to be flexible as much as we all possibly can to say, how can we help you make some savings along the way? That's also been another part. But I think it's just, it always comes down to, we don't all have to do grand gestures. It's usually the really simple stuff that's the most effective.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And Ron, do you have anything to add to that?
Not a huge amount. Stole most of what I was going to say, but I think just you know, to build on the communication point, I just think transparency about what the plan is and what's happening, so that any decisions that are made don't seem like they've come out of nowhere, is really important. And then the just recognition that these are stressful times in and out of work. So anything you can do, like letting people work from home or flexibly or whatever it is, to limit that stress, will just have such a positive outcome, not only on their life, but probably on the work as well. So it's a bit of a win-win.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the little things that count for sure. And just to add as well, my job role at Raffingers is to help businesses implement tech within their business. So me being the digital solutions manager, I will work with businesses to build the best app stack possible for them, whether it's something internally, for example, a timesheet sort of portal, or whether it's a cloud accounting system. I will make sure that whatever is implemented is the best fit for them. So just by working with Futrli and with Swoop, it allows me to spot those opportunities within your business. When doing a review of your business as a whole, I can spot whether Futrli and Swoop would be the best fit for you, which 9 times out of 10, when I am doing these sort of reviews for businesses, it is always the case. Swoop and Futrli are 2 of the main platforms which I think work very well for most companies, and something which I think most companies should be either looking at or using. So my details will be shared at the end of this webinar. So if anyone is interested in learning more about how we can help you with your business and with your systems that are currently in place, or do want to implement a brand new app stack within your business, then please reach out. I will be more than happy to help, as would Ron and Andrea. Great. Next slide, please. doesn't look like we've got any questions. I will give it a minute or so before we do finish and wrap up, just in case anybody does want to pop any questions in the Q&A box. Before we do wrap up as well, I do just want to say that I love a good success story, and being in this sort of environment now, especially when working with businesses who are implementing tech and using softwares to manage their cash flow and their forecasting, like I said, I've seen huge improvement. I've seen much happier business owners and just gratitude, really. So what I am going to ask is, do either of you have a good success story that you can share with us? Because I do think a success story is always the way to get people thinking and influenced.
Yeah, I have two that I love. One was a few months ago. One is very recent and very topical. But a few months ago, we had a business that, as I was saying, there's a lot of businesses that are growing right now. They'd won a huge HS2 contract. They needed a new plant. They needed to hire 100 new people. They needed new equipment, and we didn't just get them. They basically said, here's our project cost, it's millions, we can afford to invest a million ourselves, where are we going to get the rest from? And it was actually marrying up a grant from a local enterprise partnership with the asset finance and lease finance that we got for them. The entire project was funded through those two forms of finance, and we were able to reduce the cost of capital on it because of the grant element, which is you don't have to repay it, there's no interest, it's a government intervention. So that was one. But I think the one I'm most proud of in the recent weeks, I don't know if anyone saw, where the Shetland Islands were cut off and there was question marks over whether it was a Russian cause. Yeah. We have just helped a husband and wife team who have engineers being flown in by a helicopter to Shetland Islands to bring Starlink to the Shetland Islands. So Starlink is now operational in the Shetland Islands, and all of it was funded through partnership with Swoop to get them funded so quickly, because it all happened in an instant, not planned, couldn't put that in the cash flow forecast, and we were able to react with them to get it resolved. So for us, that's a huge win, and quite topical at the moment.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, round of applause. That's incredible. So yeah, no, see, this is why I love a success story, because it's always something like so nice and touching.
I think from my side, I mean, I work with the accountants, so I'm always second degree to the small businesses, so I work very hard and get to revel in none of the glory. But from my side, it's the little mundane things that make me really happy, like working with a small one-man band mechanic. He was trying to work out whether he needed to buy a third car lift thing so he can go and tighten the screws or whatever it is that they do, and eventually he decided that it wasn't the right decision for his business at the moment, because X, Y, and Z decisions that he made on our software, things like working with a carbon offset company, and they need to manage how much land they buy to plant the trees on to offset the planes and stuff. And just these little things where I know that they'd have been scratching their head for hours if they were trying to do it in Excel or just with a pencil and paper and stuff, and they don't have to anymore, and they're confident in those decisions and probably sleeping better at night.
Oh, 100%. No, that's amazing. Thank you both for sharing. That brings us to the end, because there are no questions. So for the viewers who are watching, again, if you do have any questions, our details will be shared at the end. So please feel free to reach out to me, and yeah, we can talk about your business, about what the plans are, and see if there's anything that we can implement to help you run it more efficiently. So thank you all for joining.